The /theo comes from the Greek word meaning God. Theology, the study of religion, is practiced by theologians. Monotheism is the worship of a single God. Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are monotheistic religions, and all three worship the same God. Polytheistic religions, such as those of ancient Greece and Rome, on the other hand, worship many gods. Apotheosis. 1. Transformation into a god. 2. The perfect example. Abraham Lincoln's apotheosis after his assassination transformed the controversial politician into the saintly savior of his country. In ancient Greece, historical figures were sometimes worshipped as gods. In Rome, apotheosis was rare until the Emperor Augustus declared the dead Julius Caesar to be a god, and soon other dead emperors were being apotheosized as well. In older paintings, you may see a heroic figure, Napoleon, George Washington, or Shakespeare, for example, being raised into the clouds, symbolizing his or her apotheosis. But today, any great classic example of something can be called its apotheosis. You might hear it said, for example, that Baroque music reached its apotheosis in the works of J.S. Bach, or that the Duesenberg Phaeton was the apotheosis of the touring car. Atheistic, denying the existence of God or divine power. The atheistic Madalyn Murray O'Hair successfully sought the removal of prayer from American public schools in the 1960s. In the Roman Empire, early Christians were called atheistic because they denied the existence of the Roman gods. And once the Christian Church was firmly established, it condemned the Romans as atheists because they didn't believe in the Christian God. In later centuries, English-speaking Christians would often use the words pagan and heathen to describe such non-Christians, while atheist would be reserved for those who actually denied the existence of any God. Atheism is different from agnosticism, which claims that the existence of any higher power is unknowable, and lots of people who simply don't think much about religion often call themselves agnostics as well. Pantheon. 1. A building serving as the burial place of or containing memorials to the famous dead of a nation. 2. A group of notable persons or things. A hall of fame serves as a kind of pantheon for its field, and those admitted in the early years are often the greatest of all. Each of the important Roman gods and goddesses had many temples erected in their name. But in 27 BC a temple, to all the gods together, was completed in Rome. Twice destroyed, it was ultimately replaced by a third temple around AD 126. This extraordinary domed structure is still one of the important sites of Rome, and the burial place for the painters Raphael and Carracci and two kings. In Paris, a great church was completed in 1789-90, named the Pantheon. It was announced as the future resting place of France's great figures, and the bodies of Victor Hugo, Louis Pasteur, Marie Curie, and many others now rest within its walls. Theocracy. 1. Government by officials who are regarded as divinely inspired. 2. A state governed by a theocracy. The ancient Aztecs lived in a theocracy in which guidance came directly from the gods through the priests. In the Middle Ages, the Muslim empires stretching around much of the Mediterranean were theocracies, and the Pope ruled most of modern-day Italy. But theocracies are rare today. Modern Iran and Saudi Arabia, and perhaps half a dozen others, are usually regarded as theocratic governments, since, even though Iran's president is elected by popular vote and Saudi Arabia is ruled by a royal family, the country's laws are religious laws. But when a government tries to follow all the teachings of a single religion, things usually don't work out terribly well, so U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights forbid using religion as the principal basis for democracy. Icon comes from the Greek icon, which led to the Latin icon, both meaning image. Though the icon root hasn't produced many English words, the words that does appear and tend to be interesting. Icon. 1. A religious image usually painted on a small wooden panel, idol. 2. Emblem, symbol. Henry Ford's assembly line captured the imagination of the world, and he and his company became icons of industrial capitalism. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, much importance is given to icons, usually small portraits on wood, sometimes with gold leaf paint, of Jesus, Mary, or a saint, which hang in churches and in the houses of the faithful. The Orthodox Church favors icons, partly because they communicate directly and forcefully even to uneducated people. They are regarded as sacred, some believers actually pray to them, and many believe that icons have carried out miracles. The common modern uses of icon grew out of this original sense. The fact that Orthodox icons have a symbolic role led to icon being used to mean simply symbol. Because of the icon's sacredness, the term also came to mean idol. And once we began to use idol to refer to pop culture stars, it wasn't long before we began using icon the same way. But for the little computer desktop images that you click on, the older meaning of symbol is the one we're thinking of. Iconic, 1. Symbolic. 2. Relating to a greatly admired and successful person or thing. The 1963 March on Washington was the iconic event in the history of the civil rights movement, now familiar to all American schoolchildren. The original meaning of iconic was essentially resembling an icon, but today it more often seems to mean so admired that it could be the subject of an icon. And with that meaning, iconic has become part of the language of advertising and publicity. Today companies and magazines and TV hosts are constantly encouraging us to think of some consumer item or pop star or show as first-rate or immortal or flawless, absolutely iconic, when he or she or it is actually nothing of the kind. Iconoclast, 1. A person who destroys religious images or opposes their use. 2. A person who attacks settled beliefs or institutions. She's always rattling her friends by saying outrageous things, and she enjoys her reputation as an iconoclast. When the early books of the Bible were being written, most of the other Middle Eastern religions had more than one god. These religions generally encouraged the worship of idols of the various gods, which were often regarded as magical objects. But in the 10 Commandments given to Moses in the Old Testament, God prohibits the making of graven images or idols for worship, proclaiming that the Jews are to worship only one God, who is too great to be represented in an idol. However, by the 6th century AD, Christians had begun to create religious images in order to focus the prayers of the faithful. Opposition to icons led to the iconoclastic controversy in AD 726, when, supported by the Pope, iconoclasts began smashing and burning the images in churches and monasteries. Clast comes from the Greek word meaning to break. In time, peace was restored, and almost all Christians have since accepted depictions of Jesus, Mary, and the saints. Today, an iconoclast is someone who constantly argues with conventional thinking, refusing to worship the objects of everyone else's faith,